Okay, how about a little treat for you? I'm going to swap out the timing belt on this Civic engine right here, and I'm going to do it outside of the car, and I'll just do a timing belt and water pump for you right here. So you can see a Civic timing belt and water pump in action right before your very eyes. Alright, we had such a great time doing our voiceover last time, we decided to bring it back for this one. I think I mentioned somewhere, don't get mad at me for using a 3/8 impact to pretty much do this. But you need to remove the valve cover. You need to remove the front covers from the timing cover. And that holds in the top part of that dipstick tube. Yeah, breaking the crank bolt loose. Good luck with that, but you'll notice there's a larger hex shape around the outside of the bolt itself. That is to insert a special tool, crank holding tool, so that you can break that loose for replacing the or for getting the nut off or bolt out of the crank bolt. Here I'm lining it up to get it in time. Basically the crankshaft rotates around 2 times for every 1 time of the camshaft, so you can have the camshaft completely 180 degrees out. There's actually an up mark on the cam, sort of at the top of what looks like a star there. You'll see an up mark. Then there's other marks on the back side of that get lined up with the cylinder head to keep it all lined up. But I break the crank bolt loose first because that's going to be the hardest part. If you can't get the harmonic balancer off, you're done. So make sure you look into doing that first. Getting the dipstick out can be tricky. You can use a little bit of penetrating oil down at the bottom. Whenever I reinsert that dipstick tube, I often put a little bit of silicone paste on the O-ring so that it doesn't roll over when I stick it down in the hole. It's usually a good idea. And the lower timing cover, fairly simple. You've got a bunch of fasteners around the outside of it that you can pull loose, and you need to disconnect all of them there, Eric, in order to get that off. But once you do, it just sort of pops off. And here you can see the basic layout. The water pump's over there, up on the right. The tensioner's just below it. The cam and the crank. It's really simple. I just removed the crank sensor there. I do that because I don't want any coolant from the water pump dripping on that, so I usually end up flipping that up out of the way on the suspension. Just remove the tensioner. To get that out of the way, timing belt, bye-bye. So now we're pretty much naked and need to only remove the 5 fasteners. Actually, I think on this one it's 4 fasteners that hold the water pump on, because the 5th one is actually the alternator bracket, or the upper part of it. So you're going to have to take that 14mm head out in order to get to that point. And a lot of times I'll smack it with a hammer when it's in the car, but I could just pull it off there. Doing this outside the car is so much easier. It's not that you don't have a ton of room in a Civic, because compared to some cars, I think it's way better than others. There is one bolt that is shorter on this. I believe it's the one that's going to be down around 7 or 8 o'clock. That's the shorter one. And by the way, I have my impact turned down. I don't know if you can see that in the back. So it's not using full torque when tightening these fasteners. I like using it because think about it. I mean, air tools can be consistent. If you set them up correctly, you can do a lot. But I always start the fasteners by hand first before I break out an impact. I don't start running them in with the impact. So make sure that you at least start the threads. That way you don't run the risk of cross-threading. Now, on the back side of this tensioner, there's a little peg that needs to fit into the assembly there. So make sure that you get that tensioner on that peg so that it has some place to pivot. This is pretty much how I do this, even when it's in the car. Start at the crank and work my way up. And there's 2 sides to a timing belt. There's the tension side and the slack side. And what I'm about to do is pull up on the tension side so that everything's all lined up. And you can see the tensioner move there. Normally I have the lower cover on when I do this, and I'm all ready up top before I put the belt on. But you can just see what's happening there when I do that. I leave the tensioner bolt loose, and it allows the tensioner to pivot so that I can get the belt on. And I pull it up on the side of tension first before I try to wrap it onto the camshaft. So that way I'm sure that the side that's important, the side that spins counterclockwise. So that long side there, everything needs to line up on that side perfectly. So I just reinstalled the crank sensor, and now we're going back at it with the lower timing cover. But you may notice that the little rubber plug that is just above the timing mark on the timing cover is left out. And one thing that's tricky about these lower covers is they need to fit into the upper lower cover. No, that sounds weird, but there's a little slot there it needs to slide into in order for it to get in there right. So if it's not going in, move it around a little bit, look to see if it's seating in where it's supposed to, but don't try to force it. Don't try to run it down. You could put the timing belt in a bind. You could make it so the timing belt starts rubbing the inside of the cover, and then you'll have a lot of noise, and then you'll get mad, and maybe you'll start throwing things. I don't know. Relax. It's just a car, just a hunk of metal, some plastic, and some other junk, some rubber, whatever. So once again, the impact gun is turned down. Man, it's just putting these down, and if I'm honest, my air compressor is not all that great for this kind of work, so I don't really have a whole lot of pressure. And that was really important there. There's a small little keyway that comes out when you remove the harmonic balancer that you need to put in there. You need to make sure that you don't lose that when you take the harmonic balancer off, because it will fall out as you go to take it off. So it just fits in that slot on the top of the crankshaft. You slide the balancer over it. The balancer also has a slot, and that gives pretty much the orientation of that thing. And this was a little tricky of being on this little pallet here and this creeper. Every time I went to do anything with it, it kept wanting to run away from me. And being on the ground, it was kind of hard to see, but still easier than doing it inside the car. And since I'm doing this engine, replacing it, no better time to do this than before we install it. So it's a good thing to do. How you doing? Anyway. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to bump you there. I usually just run these down with my impact, set it for kill, and it's going to get tight anyway. And now I'm setting the tension. Watch what I do with my hand here on the top. I hold the belt on the camshaft with my hand and use that to help keep tension on it. Remember that tensioner moved before when I pulled up on it? That's pretty much what I'm doing. I'm making sure that tension side, see how much that moved there? It's exactly how you want it tensioned. There's going to be a little more on the backside than there is on the front. The front should be banjo tight, as they say. And all it takes is a little bit of a turn, as you can see. If you go too far, the cam starts to rotate in the opposite direction. It doesn't keep tension. So you just want to turn it a little bit in order to set that tension. And once you do, you nail down that 14. And what I'm doing here is I'm reinstalling that plug in there to keep that covered up, to keep the junk out of the timing belt area. Always a good idea. Reinserting my dipstick. Don't read too much into that. And that's about it. Have fun.
Pretty much there you have it, because I'm just going to adjust the valves now before I put the valve cover back on. Don't mind that. Adjust the valves on it before I put the valve cover back on, and away you go. Real easy outside the car, isn't it? Cool, huh? I'm Eric the Car Guy. You can always visit me at EricTheCarGuy.com, or follow me on Facebook or Twitter, or Sundays podcasts at 12 Eastern Standard Time. Me and Rich Baxter from CarAndTruckTalk.com. Anyway, be safe, have fun, and of course, stay dirty. See ya.